All right, hello. I'm Doug Laney, Innovation Fellow with West Monroe's Data and Analytics practice, based here in Chicago. Good to be with you all today. We're going to cover the topic of how and why to monetize your data and kind of define what data monetization means and why it's increasingly important to organizations. The ideas here are based on some research that I did back when I was a Gartner analyst. Spent the bulk of my career as a senior analyst with Gartner. I published the book Infonomics, which talks about how and to monetize, manage, and measure data as an actual asset. We're going to focus in on the monetization part today. And then last year, I published a book called Data Juice, which includes 101 inspirational examples of how organizations are, in the real world, are squeezing value from their data assets. So I'm going to share some ideas here. Let's first talk about the kind of the background on the concept of Infonomics and this idea of data as an asset. Goes back to actually the 9/11 terror attacks, when some clients started contacting us lamenting not only the tragic loss of life, but also the loss of their data. This is in the days before cloud backups and cloud and offsite backups. So companies in the Twin Towers actually lost their data. They turned to us to help them value their data so that they could submit claims for the value of the data they lost. Unfortunately, the insurers said, sorry, we don't consider data to be property, therefore it's not covered by your P&C policies. There were a number of court cases that ensued, and court cases around the world related to when data is damaged or misused or stolen. And the courts are kind of confused on the matter. And this led the insurance industry to say, well, if the courts are kind of confused as to whether data constitutes property, and we don't want to have to pay out on those policies, the insurance industry updated the commercial general liability policy template that's used by U.S. insurers to explicitly exclude data from P&C policies. They did that a month after 9/11 to add further insult to injury. A couple of years later, the accounting profession realized that, listen, if the courts are confused as to whether data is property and the insurance industry is not going to recognize data as property, then we're no longer going to recognize data as an asset. And so even if you wanted to include the value of your company's data assets on your balance sheet, you no longer can. The US government got involved and had a hearing on how to evolve a 1930s style accounting system into the 21st century, where a number of accounting firms got up and testified that the greatest source of value in the economy today is something that we can't recognize or properly formally value, and that it's creating undue market volatility and a lack of transparency into what businesses are doing. So, well, most organizations, like yours perhaps, are trying to do more with data and treat data more as an actual corporate asset. The keepers of the definition of what constitutes property and what constitutes an asset have gone the other direction and doubled down on their antiquated notions that it's neither. But I think if we look at what the definition of an asset is, it's clear that data clearly meets the criteria of an asset. Data is something that is owned and controlled, exchangeable for cash, and generates what accountants call probable future economic benefits. So clearly, data meets the criteria. It's just that we haven't really come around to fully acknowledging that as in some professions. So, kind of forgetting what the accountants say, most organizations are more interested by what the investors are saying. And we actually found through some research that companies that are data savvy, those that have an enterprise data governance function, those that have a data science organization, and those that have a chief data officer or an executive who's accountable and responsible specifically for the organization's data assets, those kinds of companies have a market to book value ratio that's nearly 2 times higher than the market average. This is not 2% or 20%. This is 2x. Really significant number. And that data product companies, those who are in the business of selling data or data derivatives, have a 3x market to book value ratio, probably because most of the value that they generate are from non-assets like data. So let's move on to the topic of Infonomics. So this kind of led me to start thinking about not only valuing data, but what do we do with other assets? Well, we manage them and we monetize them or generate value from them. So these are really the three main aspects of Infonomics: measuring, managing, and monetizing data as an actual asset. But I want to zero in on monetizing in the time that we have available today. Now, a bit of confusion about what data monetization means. Some people think it just refers to selling data, but we have a much broader perspective of that at West Monroe, which is that data monetization is the process of generating measurable value streams from available data assets. So a little bit to unpack there. First, it's a process. This should be something that an organization is doing on an ongoing basis, or at least a periodic basis. So generating ideas, testing those ideas and implementing them. A lot of companies are already doing a lot of things with data, but are they actually measuring the impact that the data is having on the business? Are they connecting the dots between the data that's used and the outcomes that are generated from those use cases? Many are not. Most are not. And then from value streams, we're talking about generating value in a variety of ways, not just, again, selling data. And then from available data assets refers to the fact that many organizations are monetizing data that isn't theirs, but that they have access to, either from social media or harvesting data from websites, or leveraging open data sources, or exchanging data with partners. So you can see that data monetization is a lot more broader than just selling your own data. It's this idea of generating value from a variety of data assets, whether they're yours or others that you can get access to. So a number of myths about data monetization. First, of course, that data has to be sold to be monetized. We can generate economic value from data in other ways. Doesn't require an exchange of cash. Many companies that are monetizing their data are receiving other kinds of commercial considerations. It doesn't necessarily involve your own data. As I mentioned, we can monetize data that we have access to that's external. You don't have to monetize raw data. You can monetize analytics or reports or aggregate data, or even bake data into existing products and services. Data that's there's a misnomer that data that's unused doesn't have value, but in fact we see plenty of examples of organizations who are generating value from data that's just sitting there, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. You don't have to be in the data business to monetize data. Many organizations are forming data monetization or data products organizations internally. Yes, many organizations have data that's specific to them, but what you'll find is that if you aggregate it or analyze it or combine it with external data, you'll find that you can easily create data products that have value outside your organization. And another thing I'll mention here at the bottom, which is we hear a lot that organizations say, listen, we can't monetize our customer data because of privacy regulations. And I understand that GDPR and the CCPA and other privacy regulations can inhibit the way that you're using data, but it doesn't shut it down entirely. And I think this statement, when I hear this, really just reflects a lack of creativity, a lack of innovation. And I'll show you some examples of how organizations have kind of circumvented that potential limitation. So what I want to do is show you a bit of our data monetization approach, and a high level of our very well honed, detailed methodology for taking organizations on this data monetization journey, and even standing up data monetization or data product functions within their business. So the approach is broken down into 3 phases. The first phase being ideation and feasibility assessment. The second phase being more about design, and the third phase being more about engineering and implementation. So in this first phase, we're generating and refining ideas for what we can do with our data assets, and then we're kind of assessing and prioritizing them. Usually when we run the workshops, which I'm going to show you how they work, we'll generate anywhere from 50 to 100 or more ideas. And so obviously you can't implement all of those. We want to prioritize those ideas, and I'll show you how we do that as well. And then in the second phase, we'll develop the markets further. We'll interview potential stakeholders, consumers, buyers of the data. We'll curate and prepare the data assets. We'll specify the technical and foundational requirements. And if we're really taking a product approach, of course, we want to set up how we're going to support and maintain and the data products themselves, even if they're just internal data products. And then the third phase is more about architecting and engineering the data products themselves, the underlying infrastructure, establishing the support and sales and marketing parts of the program, and then overall program and project management support. So you may notice that this looks very similar to any other kind of new product design or implementation or new product introduction approach, and that's entirely true. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're leveraging well-honed processes for designing and implementing new conceiving, designing, and implementing any kind of product and applying it to data. There are a few nuances here that you'll see that are a little bit different. But I want to take you through the process now. And so the process involves pretty much 8 exercises that we do during these ideation workshops. And the first is to recognize and capitalize on the unique economic qualities of data. So what do I mean? A lot of people will liken data to the new oil, right? You hear this, it's hard to go a day or a week without hearing somebody talk about data being the new oil. And while that certainly reflects an appreciation of data as a driver of the economy today, much as oil has been over the last century or more, but it misses the point that data has unique attributes that oil doesn't have. For instance, when you consume a drop of oil, it dissipates. It turns into heat and energy and pollutants. When you consume a drop of oil, you can only consume it one way at a time. When you consume a drop of oil, it doesn't create more oil. So data is very different. Data is what economists would call, or what I call, a non-rivalrous, non-depleting, and progenitive asset. That is, it's non-rivalrous. We can use it multiple ways simultaneously. It's non-depleting. It doesn't get used up as long as it maintains some relevancy. It's just as good as it was when it was initially created. And then it's progenitive in that we typically, whenever we're using data, we're in a position to capture more data about whenever and wherever that data was used. So there are other interesting economic aspects of data that make it potentially more valuable than oil. And what we find is that the companies who that have either implicitly or explicitly embraced these economic differences are the ones that are really thriving in the economy today. Now, the next thing we want to do is look at the patterns of data monetization and understand the variety of ways that organizations are driving value from data. I've collected to date about 1,000 or so use cases of how organizations are using data in innovative ways. And in fact, if you stay till the end of this presentation, I have a little gift for you all related to that. So stay tuned. So what we do is we understood that these data monetization patterns fall into about a dozen different classes, and 2 main classes of indirect and direct data monetization. Indirect data monetization is where we're using data more internally to drive value. And direct data monetization is we're externalizing data, sharing it with others to drive value. So we can use data internally, of course, to improve our processes or reduce risk, or come up with ideas for new products or new markets, or improve our relationships with partners or suppliers or customers. I know I said that you can't include data on the balance sheet, but actually there are ways through some accounting shenanigans, let's call them, that you can actually move your data and digital assets into a separate holding company, value that company, and include the value of that company on the parent company's balance sheet. So we work with several clients to do that, and there's some advantages to focusing on your data and digital assets as a separate company, and then augmenting the value of the parent company through the value of the data assets themselves. And then direct data monetization, of course, we can barter or trade with data. We can bake it into existing products or services. We can license data or raw data or aggregate data. We can sell our insights or analyses or reports. And then remember, I talked about how a lot of companies say they can't monetize their customer data. Well, yes, I can't sell you my customer data because of privacy regulations. I can't even share it with you in most cases. But what I can do is I can sell your stuff to my customers. And in that way, I've kind of flipped the model. We refer to that as inverted data monetization. And so, for example, we're working with a hospital who knows who its diabetes patients are, but it can't sell that data to anyone. But it can introduce to those patients healthy meal plans and gym memberships and at-home, glucose monitoring test kits. And in that way, maybe take a cut of the action, a referral fee, or if you're a hospital, perhaps you're doing it as a data for good kind of example. And then we've actually seen where companies have collateralized their data to secure loans. In particular, we partner with a company called Gulp Data that does this. That's a way that you can actually generate value from your data without ever moving it or doing anything with it at all. So a lot of different interesting patterns for monetizing data that go well beyond just selling data. And so what we want to do is kind of explore each of those in the context of your business. The next is targeting the key business drivers and business functions. So we're going to look at business functions throughout the organization and where can we use data perhaps to optimize, augment, or streamline those business functions. We're also concerned at this point about what are the key business drivers for the organization. Are you more focused on revenue or risk reduction or improving quality or reducing costs? And while those are the cardinal directions, it's a lot easier actually to target the secondary directions, the secondary dimensions, like growth or experience or differentiation, and in that way lead to improvements in the the cardinal directions here. All right. So one example would be company Westpac in Australia, a bank that wanted to better understand its customers. Was only able to target 1% of their customers. They created this program called Know Me to know their better know their customers across all the channels, and this led to them being able to target market to 25% of them, up from 1%, and led to about $25 million of incremental revenue over the next nine months. So it's just an example of one of the stories that I've collected. There are also really simple examples like we moved recently homes, and when you move homes, your home goes into the MLS database here in the U.S., and it's basically a publicly available database now. So who starts reaching out to us is everyone except our bank. We get calls from and mailers from these fly-by-night mortgage companies and moving box companies and moving companies and landscapers, but our own bank didn't reach out to us, and was really surprising because we bank with one of the larger banks in the world, and I've had a multi-decade relationship with them, and they just pretty much ignored that we were moving. And I was thinking, what a missed opportunity for them to offer us a mortgage, a home equity line. Can we introduce you to your new branch? Can we print you new checks? Can we help you move the stuff in your safe deposit box? All of that. And I was thinking, how stupid simple would it have been for them to hire, a high school programmer and give him or her, a can of Red Bull and some snacks and say, listen, match the MLS database to our customer list so we can reach out to our customers. Understanding the customer journey is not terribly difficult. There are a lot of indicators, a lot of data available to better understand your customer journeys and interact with them at those key milestones. Another thing we want to do is address the wants and needs of our partners and customers and suppliers. So let's understand who they are, not just get fixated on our immediate customers and suppliers and partners, but who are our suppliers, our customers, our partners, our partners, suppliers, our suppliers, partners, and so forth, even out through and including organizations that we're not really affiliated with, like trade associations or hedge funds. And so who might find some of our data particularly valuable, and what might those data products look like? Then we get into identifying what kind of data assets you have. These are not necessarily in order. We may weave in and out of each of these ideas, but we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what data is available and what potential value it could generate for others. So, of course, we're going to look at your enterprise data and what enterprise data you have in your catalog. We want to acknowledge what data is available in the open data marketplace from that we could harvest from web content, that we could gather from social media, that we could exchange from with partners, or that we could license from syndicated data providers and perhaps augment our own data in some valuable way. Unfortunately, a lot of companies have an entire department dedicated to procuring office supplies, but not a single person dedicated to procuring data supplies. And I think that's a big mistake for companies. So a lot of companies are already doing what we call descriptive analytics, generating reports on what did we sell last quarter, or things like that, dashboards and scorecards that are informative, but really we find don't particularly move the needle on the business. So what we really want to do is kind of look at the way that you're already analyzing data and say, how can we augment those to be more diagnostic? Maybe change that question from what did we sell last quarter into why did we only sell so much last quarter, or how much are we going to sell next quarter, or how can we sell 20% more next quarter, or how can we automate or digitalize some aspect of our of our business to do real-time adaptive pricing or something like that. So that's where the real high value propositions are, and I would say 97-98% of the data monetization stories that I have are organizations that are more toward the right of the spectrum than just doing hindsight oriented business intelligence. So we might want to also look at your existing reports and analytics. Where are you already generating reports within your production or marketing or sales or support, and how can we augment those reports to be more forward-looking, those analyses to be more valuable. And so we'll typically run some exercises to generate those hypotheses. And then finally, what we want to do is adopt winning ideas from other organizations. A lot of companies come to me and they say, "Hey, Doug, what are others in our market doing?" And my flippant response to that often is, why do you want to be in second place or third place? Why not borrow ideas from other industries and be the first one to adapt that idea to your own industry? So some really cool examples here. Some of my favorites are Walmart realized they had a great search engine, but it was taking people to what they were looking for online, but it was one week there was a particular search term that was resulting in a high degree of shopping cart abandonment. The search term was the word house. Well, where it was taking people was the housewares and housing goods and dog houses and doll houses. And what actually people were looking for was the box DVD set for the television show House. And so when they looked into this, they realized, hey, these searches are coinciding with the premiere of the television show. And so what people were looking for was the box DVD set, and they realized that their search engine wasn't taking into account what was trending in the world. It was staring at its own navel and paying no attention to what was happening trend-wise. And so when they upgraded the search engine to include social media trends, they ended up reducing shopping cart abandonment by 10 to 15% across the board, which in Walmart terms is like an additional $1 billion a year. Other really cool examples, Lockheed Martin analyzes unstructured content on projects to get early warning signs of project issues like scope and budget and personnel. They're saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year in cost overruns and they claim 3 times greater foresight into project issues than using the old status reporting method. Dollar General has a self-funding data lake by virtue of making their data about shopping basket analysis and so forth available to their CPG clients. We worked with Allstate Insurance, who got a call from one of the automobile companies and said, "Hey, we want to buy your claims data." Well, Allstate is the good hands company, and they can't be seen as selling their customer data. So we said, well, why don't you create a joint venture or a separate company to aggregate and make that data available, because it's a win-win-win for everybody. Better, safer cars, lower loss ratios, and so forth. So that's what they did. They formed the company called Arity several years ago as a marketplace for insurance data. Minute Maid gets a call from Chick-fil-A who says, "Listen, the quality of your orange juice is good, but it's inconsistent region by region and season by season, and we need it to be all the same everywhere all the time." And so they sicked some flavorologists on an orange to determine there are 600 flavor components in an orange. They gathered satellite images and crop yields and cost pressures and regional preferences, and they claim about a quintillion data points baked into a precise dynamic formula for how to blend orange juice consistently. And so if there's a hurricane or a frost or a freeze, they can replan the entire business, replan the entire operation in like 5 to 10 minutes. So a lot of great stories out there on how organizations are leveraging data in innovative ways. What we like to do is surface some of those that we think might be relevant or adaptable to your own business during these workshops. When we're done, we've generated a set of ideas. Typically, we'll tag them in different ways. What type of benefit? Are there current initiatives that are related to this idea? What type of idea it is, and so forth. And then we move into understanding what kind of product types we want to generate. So because data is a non-rivalrous asset, we can generate lots of different kinds of products with it, from raw data up through custom integrated solutions. And then what we want to do is look at those ideas and plot them and say, hey, which ones are high impact and maybe low complexity? And those are the ones that we want to deploy now. Those that are low impact and low complexity, maybe we want to defer. Those that are high impact and high complexity, perhaps we have to develop some infrastructural capabilities for first, and those that are high complexity and low impact, we probably want to discard altogether. And that helps us prioritize these ideas. So then we move into the design and implementation planning, but I really just wanted to share with you kind of the overall ideation process for data monetization and how kind of robust and formal it is. I mentioned I had a gift for you all, so I've created a chatbot that has been based on my books, all my articles, and the 1,000 use cases, real world use cases that we've collected. So if you want to get access to that chatbot to kind of query it yourself or interact with it, reach out to me at dlaney@westmonroe.com or message me directly on LinkedIn, and I will provide you access. So, and then just to wrap up, kind of just some key takeaways are to think about monetizing data in multiple ways, and not just your own data, but other data. Don't just monetize data internally, but look at opportunities throughout your extended business ecosystem. I mentioned following a traditional product design and development and rollout approach. Run these ideation workshops, work with external stakeholders, gauge the ideas based on their benefit and complexity, measure the cost and value. We have a complex or pretty sophisticated economic model for assessing data product ideas, what their market value is, and their contribution to income would be versus the cost of implementing them and the cost of data. And then make sure that you've established the necessary roles for this, whether it comes to product management for your data monetization efforts or sales and marketing teams that may not be well attuned to selling and delivering data products. You might have to bring on some new people. And then some other work that I've been doing is around the economics of data and some of the things that we can learn by applying traditional economic models to data and information. So that's kind of some Infonomics 201 type of activities. So yeah, that's about it. A little bit about who West Monroe is. Advisory, execution, and we help organizations realize the benefits from data, whether it's strategic or technical. So happy to support any of you out there. Just feel free to reach out to me. And that's about it from me. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.